Well, good morning. Well, look at that. I think we're going to make it like 3 weeks in a row off of one snooze button. And so we're on a roll now. So now once we get back into kind of regular Bible study routine next week, we'll have to see if we can kind of keep the routine going, or if we'll go back to the 2 snoozer. Well, as we transition, as we have some time together here this morning as well, we're excited to be able to have Amy Formella here with us, our missionary in Sierra Leone, and to be able to share with us about some of the exciting things going on and what she's been up to. So we're excited to be able to have her with us here during our short trip back to the United States once again. So as we transition our time, let's have a word of prayer. Gracious God, we thank and we praise you that you are faithful, that you are there for us, that you are the God who forgives us, loves us, and shares your incredible love with us. And so, Lord, thank you. We thank you for all the incredible work that Amy and everybody at Lutheran Bible Translators is doing on getting your love, getting your word into the hands of people. Lord, thank you. So we pray for your blessings to be upon her presentation, but also, even more importantly, her ministry as she translates and shares your incredible love with people around the world. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I know some of you recognize me because I actually attended New Life for 2 summers. I don't remember the years, like 2012 and 2013 maybe. I was nannying my cousin's kids out in Scandia, and during the school year I was attending Concordia University, Wisconsin, but a lot of my cousins live up here, so I was able to attend this church, and the Lukes were the ones who brought me over to Bible study the first day that I was here, and since then, I came back both summers and attended church with you all in Bible study, and try to come back every time I'm on furlough from working in Sierra Leone. Okay, so right now LBT has a pretty big campaign for fundraising for different aspects of Bible translation. I'm only going to touch on it a little bit, mostly because I haven't been able to take the time to learn about it enough, because when I'm in Sierra Leone, I have Sierra Leone on the brain. And the the LBT people in the office are doing amazing things in the office, but sometimes it takes me a while to catch up. But I'll try and give a slight overview, but not too many specifics. I think some of the stuff that I have on my table probably has a link to the website that can do a better job of explaining what's going on. But their main goal is to raise a certain amount of money for capacity, engagement, and translation. So this might seem obvious, translation, of course, for Bible translation, but engagement is a huge part of that, because if we spend 10 years, I've been in Sierra Leone for 6 years, and I know we at least have 5 more years for a project that started when I was like a sophomore in high school. So obviously I wasn't there from the beginning. So even since I've been there, so when it might finish is probably 11 years, and it started quite a bit earlier than that. So like we're working really, really hard to get it done, going through challenges and blessings and all of that. But if we translate the Bible but nobody knows about it, people can't read it, people don't know what to do with it, they don't know it exists, then we're doing all of this hard work for like the 5 translators, who get to read it, but also see all the mistakes that they missed. So engagement is a huge part, because we need people to actually engage with the Bible that we're translating, not just because of the hard work going in, but of course because of the transforming power of the scriptures and the gospel, and that's why we're doing it. But we also have some work to do, both in the technical side of the translation and the people side of making sure that people are engaging with the translation. And then capacity. This is a big one. There's been a huge shift in the missions world, in the translation world over the last century, even probably the last couple of decades. And obviously I wasn't around for all those times, but just from how I understand it, translation used to be a missionary going in, learning the language, and then maybe getting someone to help them with the language. Now it's flip-flopped. There's a team of translators, and then maybe someone like me will come in with a certain skill set to help out the translators, but they're doing the work. I'm just like helping them in technology or Greek and Hebrew, whatever they haven't had a chance to learn. But also sometimes it's helpful to have two different perspectives. Because the same way that like we read the Bible in a certain way from our Western perspective, and then we learn something about the New Testament times or the Old Testament times, like, oh, that's what they understood when they read it. You know, we need like the different perspectives that help us see different sides to make sure we're thinking about, okay, how did they understand it? What does this mean? How do we translate it? So I don't have to be American to do my job. People do my job who are from Africa, Asia, Canada, South America, but just I have noticed that sometimes it's helpful to come from outside of the culture that we're working in, not because I know anything from their culture better, but because I can look at it from a slightly different perspective than the rest of the team. And the same thing happens with me. Sometimes I'm like, no, we need to translate it this way. And they're like, no, we do this in our culture. Or this is more familiar for us than it is for you. And then they'll explain and be like, okay, you're right. Moving on. But with all of us working in the team, we all need our capacities to be built up and expanded. The translators don't always have what they need in the country where they live. Sierra Leone is a very small country. They have a number of universities, but not all of the right programs or at the right level. So, or they don't have the finances to attend those universities or the time, because a lot of people who have the capacity to do Bible translation, they're wanted everywhere. Or they need to work certain jobs so then because they don't get enough money other places. So but LBT is really trying to invest time and financial support and prayers into people being able to do any part of the translation literacy work, because sometimes it's really hard for Americans to go over and leave their families for a long time, or because of family reasons or medical reasons or any kind of reason, people can't always go. And it's so much better to have the translators know as much as they need to know, and if they have the time. So they're really working on building up the people in Sierra Leone, Liberia, Ethiopia, wherever, so that then once they're done working in their own project, or they already finished a project, so then they can come help other projects, either in their own country or in another country. And the way we do this, all of these things are obviously through different ways. We have in the office translation work. This is pretty much what I see every single day. This is our office in Sierra Leone. We have to start from drafting from English into Mende or Tende, and going then team checking, reviewing. I'll talk more about those stages later. Some of you might be familiar, some of you might be new, so hit those a little bit. But just translation in the office, making sure we're understanding the text flow, we're understanding how it's being translated into Mende. If you're too literal, like word for word literal, I should say, then it might look correct, but you might be giving the wrong meaning. Because I don't know if you've ever interacted with people from a different culture or went overseas, there might be rules that you didn't know until you did it wrong. And then someone told you, or you get a weird look. My dad got in trouble once in England for saying the number 2, but in a way that you're not supposed to, because it's the same as the middle finger. If your hand is flipped a certain direction, and someone messaged him like, Tom, you can't do that. So those sorts of things, we have to be careful. So either sometimes we might have to add a little bit more information, or if it's poetic, maybe use a different symbol that means the same thing, but that's not going to give the wrong idea to the Mende people in the Mende culture, Tende culture. Literacy is very important again because if you have the scriptures written, and we also generally, most translations now are also in the audio format, but it can take some time. And some projects, they try and go right first into audio and then written. But literacy is really important so that people can read the scriptures. And even if they do have the audio, it's also good to learn how to read so that you can study them and that you can flip back and forth, because when you're doing audio, it's harder to find the specific verse that you're looking for. And so there's an organization called the Institute for Sierra Leonean Languages. They train coordinators who then train these facilitators teaching people their own language, from small children to older adults. And this is important for a lot of reasons, not just for Bible translation, but if you can read your own language, then it'll be easier to learn other languages later on, and if you know English, you know how to read English, then you can learn your own language. But there are a lot of really, really smart people who don't know how to read their own language. So these are important even for the smartest people out there. Because right now, English and French, they have really high status. So these ministries are important for people to know that, one, there's no language that's more important than the other to God. God speaks all languages, He can hear all languages. English doesn't need to be used in worship. It doesn't need to be used in prayer. You don't need to read English for the Bible. You can use your own language. And also just for knowing that your language and your culture have dignity, and that it's not all about English or the bigger languages or bigger countries. So literacy is a part of scripture engagement, but there are other pieces to it too. I don't work as much in scripture engagement because we're in the office too much, because we have a lot of work to do for translation specifically. But engagement is important from the beginning, even before you start the translation until way after, to make sure the community is involved in the translation process. They know about it. It's not just those people over there. It's like the Mende community's Bible, because that's going to be more likely to be used if the community is a part of it. And this is difficult because it doesn't always happen at the beginning, and then like organizations and Bible studies or Bible societies refocus on it later on, which is kind of what we're doing right now. But it's majorly important, not just, again, for our hard work to not stay on the shows, but also so that people have a way to engage with the scriptures in a way that they understand. Like for us at this church, maybe the liturgy or contemporary or whatever, you have a way that you prefer to engage in worship and scriptures. And then in Sierra Leone, there might be another way, another style of music, or like drama or radio or music, like scripture songs, kind of thing, different ways that people like to engage in a style that's more natural for them, that makes it easier for the scriptures to come to them and be understood. If any of you have seen the Jesus film, that's a big thing, where they show the Jesus film in the language of the people, or at least one of the ones that people are more connected with. And then, of course, technology is huge. We have an IT person with LBT and someone who works for the Bible Society. So because if the computers are dead, we can't do our work. If there's a problem with the software or computers, or we've had a lot of unique random challenges. I'll message the IT guy who's been working for LBT for 15 years, and he's like, Amy, I've never seen this problem before. I'm like, happy to expand your horizons. But so information technology people on all sides are very important. The ones who can fix your computer, the ones who can do the software, the hardware, whatever. I can kind of do computer stuff, but not enough. So it's definitely helpful to have these guys. And so these aren't the technology people, these are the translators for the Monday and 7-day teams, but they are receiving computers because IT people found a computer, bought a good one, installed the software on it that we need, and are always there for us when we need them. And a lot of missionaries have children, but there aren't always schools for the children to attend, especially, if the kids want to go to an American school when they get older or at a university in the US. So a lot of parents choose to either homeschool or have their kids go to a local school and then supplement later for the different qualifications, I guess. So one of the other things that is important for missions is also teachers. Some teach at international schools and some teach missionary kids. So all of these things are possibilities for people to work in. Like I said, we don't need, it's not only Americans who can be missionaries and work as translators, but they are very helpful. So if any of you or your kids or your grandkids or anybody you come across is like, if you're really cool to work in Africa for like 10 years. And I also, it's Greek and Hebrew or linguistics might seem scary, but like it's not as scary as you think it is. So there are a million opportunities, and LBT keeps expanding because all of those things, capacity, translation, and engagement, all of them have opportunities for people to work alongside other people. And it's focusing more on the capacity side, because again, we don't want to rely so much on missionaries all of the time to be in the right place at the right time with one team. That's what I do. But we want, to build the capacity of people everywhere so that Ethiopians, they have an awesome program over there now. And I keep telling them, keep going to your classes because we might need you at some point because we need more help in Sierra Leone. Some of you know me, but just as a brief overview, I grew up in Neenah, Wisconsin, and when I'm home, I usually stay in Little Chute. But my sister lives in Hudson, and she has 2 twin boys, so that's probably, I'll go see them either today or tomorrow. I went to Concordia University, Wisconsin, and got my degree in theology, theological languages, so Greek, Hebrew, and a little bit of Latin. And the program was called Lay Ministry, but now it's the Director of Christian Ministry, I think. Then I went to the Graduate Institute of Linguistics, which is now called Dallas International University. I didn't get my master's, but I got a graduate certificate in linguistics, which helped a lot. Fortunately, Mende has been written down for like 100 years, so I didn't have to, and people have done a lot of linguistics research compared to other languages, so I didn't have to be one of those people helping people write down an alphabet, do a grammar, do a phonology, and I thank God every day for that. I can do linguistics, but I'm not a linguist. But it really helps when we're trying to figure out a problem or I'm trying to learn and understand the language better is having that background. Then I was visiting churches. I came here in 2016 or 17 to tell you what I was going to do, to fundraise, to go over to Sierra Leone. And then finally, in May of 2017, I moved to Sierra Leone. So I just crossed my 6-year mark, which is kind of insane. So I was like learning language, learning the culture, trying to figure out how to live in Sierra Leone. And in 2018, I really started to work full-time with the Mende team. And then in 2019, I came on furlough and talked to you guys again. And then 2020, I came back 3 months after I got home from my furlough because of COVID. And we just didn't know, what was going on or what was going to happen. And I was at that time in Sierra Leone alone because my colleagues had to leave for a non-COVID related medical reason just before COVID started coming to West Africa. So my boss was like, well, we're not really sure what's going to happen, but we'll bring you back just to be on the safe side. And so I stayed home for about 9 months and started working with the team online. We had to work with the consultant online, so that kind of forced us to get started and figure out the process. And then after that, the translators and I were able to connect like 2 or 3 times a week until I went back to Sierra Leone in January 2021. Yeah. So since 2021, I've been in Sierra Leone pretty much the whole time other than short trips. And now I'm back 4 years since I saw you guys last time to update churches and connect with you all again. I can't believe it's been 4 years. It's kind of crazy. But I've been in Sierra Leone long enough to be on my second furlough, but I'm glad to be visiting you guys again. So in 2021 is actually kind of, at the end of 2020, I was still in the States and my boss was like, look, your colleagues left. We want you to help the 10-day team that they used to work with. And I was like, okay, I'll try, I guess. That's also the same time I decided to start my master's. So I do help with the second team, but not as much as the first. I don't know Temne very well, but I'll talk about them a little bit more later. So there's kind of like a lot of things happening professionally kind of at the same time that I moved back to Sierra Leone after, not after COVID, but when my boss and I were like, okay, you can go back, it's fine. 2020 was last year. I was in Sierra Leone pretty much the whole year. There was then a month visiting family and for a conference. But that's when we started this thing called consultant in training. Everybody's kind of trying to make me be a consultant. It's going to take like 10 years. But it was one of those things that I was never sure I wanted to do. And then last year they were like, all right, we don't have enough consultants. We don't have enough time. You got to step up. Let's go. So I was like, okay, I'll try. So last year was another year where I kind of stepped into, my role is mostly the same, but continuing to change a little bit. And then this year, I'm of course here, but right before I was here, I was doing a training in Italy for consultants in training. And it's not an official title that I have yet, but the consultant that I work with works for the United Bible Societies, and they have a 2-year training that they do to kind of get people to the next level. And during the training, I realized there are a lot of things that I have to learn, so they're definitely pushing me to the next level, or at least showing me what it is, so telling me how much I need to know. Fortunately, the rest of my trainings this year are going to be online. So I don't have to travel outside of the States again until I go back to Sierra Leone, which is, I like traveling is fine, but sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming. So some of you have seen this picture at least twice, but I'm like, I already have it set up. So Sierra Leone is in Africa, West Africa, and it's like technically the roundest country in the world. My friend Hannah always likes to point out. And you can see it's along the ocean. And within Sierra Leone, I live in Bo. It's the second largest city. It has about 250,000 people. And then McKinney is where the other project that I visit sometimes. It's like a 3.5-hour drive, but you have to there's like only a dirt road. And I've heard some people say, yeah, you can take it during dry season, and other people tell me not to. So I just take the paved road, kind of come here and then up here and then go this way. And then Freetown is the capital. So, and the airport is in Lundy in a village here. So you have to if you're coming from the capital, you have to take the water taxi to the other side of the bay and then take a bus to get to the airport. So just a fun fact. Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone has, I think, about 7 million people. And the 2 languages that I work with are the 2 largest languages. They're the 2 largest tribes, and then they're the 2 largest first languages. There's a language called Creole. It's the language of wider communication. So only a small portion of people speak it because they are the people who came from Jamaica, Nova Scotia, who were freed slaves from the British colonies. And so they brought their Creole language back to Sierra Leone, and they were their own kind of tribe. But that language is spoken pretty much everywhere in Sierra Leone. But for most people, it's a second language. But of course, just in a lot of places, it's becoming some of the children's first language, and they're not speaking as much of their parents' language anymore. But and a lot of people usually like to ask about the Muslim-Christian dynamic. It is a majority Muslim country. There is a pretty strong Christian presence, though, even though it's only like 30% of the population. I think most of the presidents do tend to be Christian, but our current president is married to a Muslim, and I think they had like a mosque wedding and a church wedding. So Sierra Leoneans are proud of the fact that they are religiously tolerant of each other. So like a lot of intermarriage, or at least friends, people living in a similar community, it can change depending on your family. Like I know there are some families who are less, they're not very happy when their children or family members convert to Christianity, where other people, they're fine with it. So it's not a society cultural level where there are issues, but sometimes within families themselves, there are different dynamics. But in general, if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, it's fine. And sometimes there's a mixing. Like sometimes it's hard to tell what people are because they kind of want to be everything: Christian, Muslim, practice traditional religion. So that's one of the good things about having the Bible in your own languages, so you can really understand what the scriptures teach and see how it's different from Islam and traditional religion, and the freedom that the gospel brings from the fear that the other religions can kind of bring. So this is the town where I live. Most of the towns or cities have a clock tower. So this is Bow and our clock tower. I kind of live off here to the side a little bit. Like I said, Bow has about 250,000 people. It's called the second city or the second capital. There's a pretty big difference between the capital and Bow. Freetown has a lot of stuff. You can go rock climbing. There are some pretty decent restaurants, and a lot of them they have more people. So more rich people and more poor people and more of everything, more international people. So just more of everything. But in Bow, we have a couple restaurants. It's nice though because we don't have the traffic of Freetown. Our electricity is a little bit better. Our internet's a little bit better because we don't have to share with so many people bogging down. So I can't. And we do currently have a pizza restaurant, so I try and eat there. So they say he doesn't. He studied in Dakar, Senegal, and I think Switzerland. So he even built like a legitimate pizza oven inside his store. So we're trying to keep him in business. These are my animals. I only started with this one here, Kiddo. She is now 6 years old. And all of a sudden, like this last year she decided to get pregnant, and her boyfriend's sister/girlfriend also had children. So that's her, I guess, boyfriend's daughter, and then her son. And these two, Balto and Kiddo, are my own dogs. And she's technically belongs to the compound, but emotionally she's mine. And we finally got a cat. There are a lot of rats in my compound, not in my house anymore, fortunately, but in the compound. And so this little guy has been chasing him away and making sure her scent is everywhere. So in Sierra Leone, there are a lot of different ways that people interact with dogs, but like the general, they're more security. But some people, let them treat them, more like, I wouldn't necessarily say family, but they like to have fun with them and play with them and stuff like that. But I think my colleagues probably make fun of me for letting my dogs in my house and even on my furniture. But they're pretty entertaining and they like to cause a lot of trouble. This one likes to climb on top of the table. So we compare her to a goat a lot of the time. But and then these are my human family in Sierra Leone. This is Carrie Jo. She's like my missionary mom. She lives in McKinney, the city in the north that I visit, but she has a project in Bow. I lived with her family for the first 2 months I was in Sierra Leone when I was getting oriented to life there. And because my missionary colleagues had 4 kids and a nanny all living in the same house, so they didn't exactly have space for me. So I stayed at her house, and now we're like even more connected because she stays at my house. I stay at her house. She grew up in Sierra Leone as a missionary kid, and she works in the medical field. And she's one of those people who's very real. So she really sees all of the challenges, and she's not afraid to say them or acknowledge them. But she's also not afraid to see like the goodness and the blessings, and people, like she sees people for their whole selves. So she's like a really good role model and a really good missionary mom to have to like be able to hold that ambiguity of people's humanness. Like, wow, I had a really hard time with this person today, but also like I've seen, them be a big blessing to their community, and just like, I don't know, she's just always a good person to talk to and help me better understand the Sierra Leone point of view because she's lived in it for 20 years, 30 years. These are my Monday brothers. Samu is the security at my compound, and then Sule cleans the other apartments in the complex. Sule has been working with a Lebanese family that owns the apartment complex where I live for like 15 years, I think, and Samu's been there for at least probably 7 or 8 or more. And like it took me a while to get to know them because I'm just kind of shy, but now like they're kind of, these 3 people are some of the people that I talk to the most about anything. One time I had Samu hold on to my phone because I was like needed to concentrate on school work, and I was like, Samu, I keep looking at my phone, just take it away from me. He's like, Amy, I don't want to hold on to your phone. What's up? I'm like, Samu, I'm not gonna like get mad at you if you drop my phone or whatever. I just need someone to take it away. So like, and he'll come talk to me about politics or family or whatever. And I would say like in the last couple of years, my colleagues, these guys, I've started to feel more a part of Sierra Leone, and also like in both directions. Like I felt like I've been able to share more of myself, but also people have been sharing more of themselves. And sometimes I don't understand, and sometimes they don't understand. But we both. I've accepted that I don't need to be understood 100% all the time, and also that it's okay if I don't understand other people all the time for us to be good friends. These are some of the missionaries in the Bow area. They tend to change a lot. Bethany, I don't have a picture with just her and I, but she's also one of my best friends in Bow. And so this just represents the sometimes ever-changing, sometimes consistent presence of missionaries. They're a huge part of living overseas. Because sometimes you just need to be able to say something or tell a joke or comment on something and have somebody understand it right away. Because sometimes when I'm talking to my colleagues, I have to explain something to then be able to share what I want to share in the first place. And so when you're around people who have a more similar context, even if it's like they're from England or Europe, it's a little bit easier sometimes just to be like, just take a breath. When my colleagues are speaking in Mende or Creole too fast for me to understand, like they're a little bit more lively than when they have to like not just translate their words, but also like translate their experience so that I can better understand it. So I know it definitely goes both ways. And then this is the church that I attend. This is Pastor Yasa. He's the pastor mainly at the church. And then this guy, he's going to the seminary, but he's actually the Mende coordinator for literacy, and he's one of our community reviewers for the Bible translation. So that's one of the cool things, is that a lot of people that I know are connected to all of the people LBT works with, whether it's Bible translation, literacy, or the Lutheran Church. And I really appreciate Reverend Yasa. He loves being Lutheran. He has really good theology, and like it's hard when you have prosperity gospel so prevalent and so tempting to be a part of. But he sticks to the scriptures. He sticks to Lutheran theology, and and he loves it. So I'm always grateful going to church on Sundays and hearing the law and the gospel and his teaching. So I've been very blessed to have that church nearby. In Sierra Leone, so I work for Lutheran Bible Translators, of course. They're my sending organization. It's where my bosses are. It's where a lot of my colleagues are, but they all live in different countries. I don't work with anybody from LBT in Sierra Leone, so I work with the Bible Society of Sierra Leone. Like, they're the organization that I interact with the most. These are some of the head office people, programs, accountant, media. I think she sells Bibles. She's newer. Sherbrooke translator, administrative assistant, CAP officer / IT. So the Bible Society of Sierra Leone is the organization who does Bible translation in Sierra Leone. So LBT used to do Bible translation in a lot of different countries, but then, and so like we even had some copyrights that were under LBT that they then had to transfer to other organizations like the Bible Society of Sierra Leone. But now the Bible Society of Sierra Leone has all translation projects, and then LBT just comes in and assists them through finances, through mentorship, through me living there. But this is, these are some of the people at the office who make it possible for us to do what we do by doing the budget, making sure people get their salaries, making sure that like we have a structure to work within. And so I mentioned 2 teams, Temne and Mende. The one that I work with part-time, I try and visit them every other month, or when they have something going on that I should be around for a whole week. They have been working on this translation for a while. This translation is a bit unique because they were translating from the Good News version, and they were almost done, but they wanted it to be transferred into like the Revised Standard Version kind of. Yeah, so the people who are familiar with the 2 styles, it's like a much more dynamic, straightforward, like you might have 2 verses put into one. It's more translating the meaning than translating like the word. I don't know. And then now they're doing it more with a translation that's more closer to the ESV. So there are certain places where they would have had to split one verse into 2 that were previously combined into one. They might say like John was the father of these people, but ESV might say Joseph was the father of this person, who was the father of this person, who was the father of this person. They're just very different styles. And when you say we want to revise it so it reflects this base translation instead of this one, that's a whole new project. And that's pretty much what happened. My colleague was like, we can't do this, and just like, this is not an easy task. We kind of have to like start over. So that's what happened in 2013. They kind of like, with newer translators, and Ruthie, they kind of started again from Genesis to Malachi to really take the whole project and make it a more literal translation, or at least I should say using a more literal base translation for the Temne translation. Ideally, it's going to be very nice Temne that's easy to understand, but they get to choose for themselves like when they need to like make decisions. Whereas Good News kind of chooses for you when to make it easier and when to keep all of the words. So they have 5 translators. Joseph Kamara, he is kind of like the grandfather of the project. He is a teacher in linguistics and education. He has his master's, I think, in education. Thomas Laco is a pastor and a radio personality and a translator. They're all part-time except for Simon. Simon's a full-time translator and I think also a pastor, and he teaches literacy in his language. Reverend Kelvin Karoma, he also has his master's. He teaches at a Wesleyan seminary. So he's kind of like our exegete for the project because he also knows some Greek and Hebrew. And then Daniel Fula is also a reverend and a teacher or a professor, and he has his master's. in linguistics that he finished a couple years ago. And that's one of the things that LBT helped with, supporting his education that way. And he is also the team lead. This is the team that I work with pretty much every day in the office that I showed you earlier. Kamanda is the team lead. Mr. Safa is part-time. He's kind of our linguist and part-time translator. Mr. Lamine works selling the Bibles at the office, and he also makes sure that the office is kept together and everything. Tommy is a translator. Eunice used to be the keyboarder. She's also kind of the secretary, but like for the translation team, I would probably call her like a translation team assistant. She's there with us when we're team checking, and she's learning how to do translation stuff, but she's not quite a translator yet. And then Mr. Bandi is another translator. These three guys, Kamanda, Mr. Safa, and Mr. Bandi, we're all teachers or are teachers, and Tommy, this guy over here, is also tends to work in radio or journalism. So as you can see, pretty much everybody on every translation team that I know that exists, like they have multiple hats. Most of this team is full-time, but I know Kamanda also teaches Monday at a local university on the weekends. And he's also somehow the principal of a trade school. And Mr. Safa is, often has other responsibilities because he's been a catechist and an administrator in the Catholic Church, and he used to be a principal, so he always has things to do. And Mr. Vani is actually a chief of one of the sections of Bo. So when I had to work out some paperwork with someone, he was the one who signed it as the chief. And none of them are related, but they act like a family. So there's a lot of good times, some crazy times, but like at the end of the day, we're all working together as a team and as a family. Oh wow, I talk too much. So the process of translation is very long and complicated sometimes, but there are 4 main stages. Drafting. So ideally, you're going to read the whole book. So if you're drafting, let's say the book of Matthew, you want to read the whole book of Matthew, and you want to find things that you either need to look up or like focus on, like how are we going to translate these key terms. You're going to translate it into Monday, but while you're doing that, you're supposed to look at like the word level, the sentence level, the paragraph level to make sure it all connects. That's kind of hard to remind the translators to do, and I can't blame them because I'm not a translator, so I can't get too annoyed with them. But afterwards, I always remind them, now that in the New Testament that we just are finishing now for drafting, to always go back and proofread for different things, spelling, punctuation, but also like ideally reading it out loud to make sure that it sounds good. And that like when you're telling a story, because sometimes it's easy to get stuck on word for word or within one sentence, but it doesn't actually connect like either the word you used or the flow of the sentences in the paragraph. So we try, they go back and proofread. And then there are some, oops, I accidentally edited a little bit. There's a handbook that was prepared by people who did my job and who are much smarter than me so that we could do our job better. They give us hints about the Greek and the Hebrew, about the culture of the Old and New Testament, connecting verses to other verses and all of those things so that, we have some commentaries and we have some resources, but this one aids us so that we don't need all of the resources because we can't get all of them. They're very expensive, and some of them are books, or you have to train translators how to use that software. So they did all of that, but it also gives us hints for like, if you have a language that doesn't have passive voice, here's a way that you can deal with that. And Monday doesn't really have passive voice. So those are helpful hints that we have to work with. Team checking is pretty much what we've been doing every day for a long time. And this is when, as you can see, we're all sitting together. Now we have a projector So we're all able to look at what the keyboarder is putting into the screen, and we're reading through what the one person drafted. We're comparing it to the English. We're looking at the handbook. I'm occasionally glancing at the Greek and Hebrew for any questions we have there, looking at pictures, looking at background to make sure that the drafter was correct in like the way he translated the meaning, and then also making sure that the Mende he used was understandable to other people who speak Mende, and that it flows well. Because sometimes, again, you can get stuck. Okay, this is the way English has it, and it's hard to go outside of that box and say, how do we say the same thing in a way that's clear and understandable for us? So sometimes you can generally follow the flow of the Greek and the English. Sometimes you have to put the end of the sentence at the beginning or add some words at the beginning to be like, okay, this is what we're talking about because the sentence started like 3 verses up. So you might have to remind people along the way what's going on, or like if there's a pronoun that starts a section, you might have to be like, wait, who are we talking about? If someone was reading this in church, would they know who you're talking about? Okay, let's add David. So everybody knows we're still talking about David.
They all look like they're fighting a headache.
Probably. They're like, Amy, we're tired. We have to work again tomorrow. And I'm like, I mean, if you want to be here for 10 more years, it's okay. We can go home. But yeah, every day, it is a fight kind of every day. I don't know if we have too much. Okay, oops, that's on my computer. We'll look at the Paratext software if I have a couple minutes at the end. So the next stage is community review. That's when we bring 10 to 15 people from the Mende community. If we have the finances, we'll ask people from farther out to come. Otherwise, it's people around Bo. We try and get people from the different dialects. There are 4 Mende dialects, so we want to make sure we have people of different ages, men and women, and then people who represent each of the 4 dialects. So again, we want people to be a part of the process. If you were a reviewer for English Bible, you might be more willing to be like, hey, I was a part of that. You should read it. It's awesome. We worked really hard on it. And if something's not exactly the way you wanted it, you already have like advocates to say like, look, I've been a part of this process. It's not as easy as you think. These are some of the reasons why they chose these things. But also it's good to have other people looking at your work to say like, yeah, that's okay, but we can say it better. Or I don't really understand that word, or we don't use that word anymore. Or we use that word, but it kind of has some weird connotations, either negative or inappropriate or whatever. And so like sometimes we always need people from outside to be a part of that process to kind of like maintain our focus. And, whenever you're in an office with just 5 people doing your work, it's sometimes hard to be like, okay, we have all of this information and all of this training, but does my mom in the village, if she just read this for the first time and didn't have all of the training that I did, would she understand it in the same way that I want her to? So before I talked about being a consultant and training, this is kind of the stage where that comes into play. This project has been going on, like I said, since 2008, and the translators didn't have the same training. I didn't have the same training. A lot of things have changed since then. So before the consultant comes and checks the books, we're now going back to the books and reviewing them because we've changed some words, some spellings, and we're just paying a lot more attention to how the Mende is understood. And the linguist has been helping us a lot. Like he's like, that's fine, but we can say it better. And he actually finds a way to do it better. So this stage is important. 1, because the consultant doesn't have a lot of time. So we need to make sure that the week that she's with us online or in person, we're as ready as possible. But also it just gives us some time as a team to make sure that we're updating the older books to the level that we can do now. So we have like an unofficial pre-consultant check when we're just getting the book ready for the consultant. But now the consultant has said, hey, can you check with the team? And then eventually, as everybody's feeling more comfortable and I'm getting more like better at my side of the job, that means she won't have to necessarily check the whole book. She'll eventually be able to check less and less and less of the book and only check like difficult verses or verses I want her to check. And so right now she's still checking most of the book, but when we come together for those weeks where I'm like a baby consultant or consultant in training, like the team gets food. We have, the head office is checking in to make sure everything is going well. We have fuel or a generator to make sure we can have the projector the whole week. And those are like, the team and I should always be in the team, but consultant check weeks, we need to make sure the whole team is available. They don't have like a reason to leave the office unless it's necessary. And I'm more leading the sessions. So ideally in the future, Bridget, our consultant, she'll be able to do more with the time that we have with her. So instead of checking the whole book of First Kings, maybe she'll only check half of it and focus on like the more difficult parts. We're not quite there yet, but this is all part of the process of the team having more capacity, me learning more and more how to get to the next level of my job, and then just the shortage of consultants and needing the rest of us to start like moving up. So then all of that work is so that Bridget on the screen or in person can come and look through the translation to make sure we understood the Greek and Hebrew well, and as I've said a number of times, like the history and the culture of the Old Testament. Trying to build the tabernacle in Mende, let me tell you, if I had nightmares, I would have nightmares about those checks because it took so long because you have to imagine first all of the pieces that go into building the tabernacle, all of the pieces that go inside of the tabernacle that they carry, from the desert to the land of Canaan. And it's like, when you're reading it, it's like, okay, cool, this is fine. Like, you can kind of get like the main point and like the reason why it's important in the New Testament and everything. But when you have to translate it, you actually have to understand every single piece that goes into the tabernacle. And that was the piece I was like, okay, I'm not quite ready to be a consultant yet. So it's like, but that's, those are times when Bridget for sure would come in and make sure that, like, because she's been studying these things for a lot longer. And so those are the times we are really grateful for her, and she was very patient with us as we were trying to get an idea. The translators were trying to understand all of these small pieces of the tabernacle so that they could try and find the best way to translate it into Mende. So for now, our goal is to work with the consultant every month, but it doesn't usually work out. So we're trying to get other LBT consultants to come help out. But this is a major prayer point because there's too much work and not enough consultants to come help all of the projects that need books to be checked. And I'm like I said, I can help prepare the books for her and maybe give her a little less work to do, but I'm still probably 10 years away from being a consultant. And then ideally at some point, we'll take pieces of the translation and bring them out to the community. So we've already had some people come in and read it, but this one gives us a chance to tell people about the Bible Society, about the translation, and hear their concerns, but also it gives us a chance to read the Bible in the market, or while some young guys are playing chess or checkers. So this is an important part of engaging with the community, and this is kind of a newer step for us in Sierra Leone. It hasn't been done in a while, so we're kind of trying to find that again, and so it takes more planning and finances and all of that. But the Bible Society is starting to find their stride again in this piece. So just a quick look for the Monday Old Testament project, because they didn't have that reset button like the Temne did. We are actually done with the Old Testament except for the consultant check. We are done with the Deuterocanonical books, which are some of the apocryphal books for the Catholic Church. There are a lot of Catholics in Sierra Leone, so they requested that we do those books, and I hadn't actually read too much of them before we translated them, and they're actually really fun to read. There are some interesting things in there, but some of the wisdom, is really nice. And then some of the stories, it's like if you need something to read, they are interesting stories. But that'll be in like the Catholic edition of the Bible. And then the New Testament, we're actually really close to finishing the New Testament. So this shows you the difference between, a team that just started and a team that's been doing this for a long time. This team started the New Testament drafting last year in January. And before the year is done, we'll be done drafting the New Testament. Generally, that takes a lot longer. Yes, ma'am.
You started Revelation.
Yeah, actually, Tommy, the shorter guy, he just finished translating Revelation, I think, a couple weeks ago.
Did it take him a long time? Because it's really hard for us to understand.
Yeah, so Revelation is one of those weird books because it actually has a lower difficulty in translation. And like, John doesn't have like the hardest Greek. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, it's the same with John the Gospel too. Like, it's very difficult to understand, but when I had to translate it for my Greek class, it wasn't as difficult as like some of the other books that I had to translate, but then trying to understand what's inside after you translate it's very difficult. But we haven't team checked it yet, so that'll probably happen in a couple years. So that's probably when we're going to have more.
It's really hard to understand.
Yes. So, and that's kind of one of the nice things about being in Bible translation. We get to do a ministry that supports all of the different denominations and supports theology happening. But for myself, I love being Lutheran, but for the things that are hard to teach, I don't have to teach them because I'm in translation. So I leave it up to other people to do that part. But yeah, but we have a lot of discussions in the team. Like I do have to be prepared both for myself, but also as a missionary. Like people do expect me to know things, and I try to understand things well. Again, just for myself as a Christian, but also because when we have discussions as teams, when things come up, I want to be prepared. For the 10-day, okay, so no team checking has been done yet. Matthew is the next book, so we're just finishing our last DC book for team checking. This should be 11 out of 12, and Matthew, the team will start checking it, I think, next quarter, so like probably July or August, so that's exciting. I'm always like, hey guys, we finished this testament and like team checking, and they're like, okay, cool. Like, I'm always really excited, and they're like, well, we still have more to do, so. So the 10-day team, they're a little bit more behind because they had to do that reset with the new base text for the RSV. So they drafted everything. They're all part-time, so they're really fast at individual work because they can do their work at home. But because they're part-time, they can't team check and review as fast. But three of them have masters and in linguistics, one of them, and so they're kind of made for this. But they don't have as much time to work. But when they work, they're very efficient. So they're more than halfway there for the team checking and the reviewing, and again, consultant checking is too low. We haven't decided yet about the DC books. They have to talk to the Catholic Church about that. And I'm hoping they can start drafting the New Testament at the beginning of next year. So I'll do probably a couple of days of training to focus on the history and the culture of that time to prepare their minds for shifting from the Old Testament to the New Testament, and then they'll start working on their individual books. And then I am working on my master's at a school in California. It's called Biola University. I'm doing it in New Testament. And I'll probably do another one in Old Testament because a lot of the projects are going back to the Old Testament, and then you have to revise the New Testament. I was like, I don't know which one to choose. So I'm just going to do both. And if I get my doctorate, which I need to get become a consultant, then I need all of those classes anyway. So it kind of works out. And then the training that I'm doing in Italy is, like I said, to get to the next level. This is our consultant and another consultant who does the Africa area training, and then for the in general for everybody from the Bible societies everywhere. That's going to last for the next 2 years. I think I had one training in Italy. The next two are going to be online, and next year might be the same. And of course, Balto, has to be like, Mom, you don't have to do homework. You can pay attention to me. Okay, so I have all of this information in the back, and I think a lot of you already signed up for the newsletter, but if you wanted to donate any money, I've been doing this so long that I forget that I actually have to talk about it, but I am supported fully by churches like New Life, and you guys have been supporting me for a long time, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. And also individuals. Obviously we have a lot of work yet to do. So every year until I'm done, I'm gonna need to be supported. So there are different ways to do that. If you like the internet, then you can use this website or a QR code. Otherwise, if you like paper, you can send checks to LBT. And if you ever have any questions or just want to reach out and say, hey, I'm praying for you, like that's super cool. Or like, hey, your presentation covered all sorts of stuff, but not what I wanted to hear. Can I ask you this question? So for you guys, probably this email and then the top phone number would be the best. This one is working now, the bottom one. When I go to Sierra Leone, it won't work anymore. But this one up here is like a Wi-Fi number through Google. So it works. I can use it on my desktop or any phone that I don't need like a SIM card or a network to use it. And of course, when you're praying every Sunday or in your home or wherever, Sierra Leone is having their elections this Saturday. So if you're ever going to pray for Sierra Leone in the next 5 years, pray for them this week. Every single day, if you remember, elections anywhere, I mean, even in the US, this last election that we had for the president, it was a little bit crazy for us. Like the leading up to it, a few months after it, like we had things that haven't happened in, I don't know, at least in my lifetime, in developing worlds or countries where they're still, having effects from transitioning from colonialism to independence. They're still finding their stride in all of that. And so elections can be times when things go wrong. And sometimes a few things go wrong, sometimes a lot of things go wrong. So if you can pray for wisdom, peace, safety, this is another time when like people who have power and money like to take advantage of younger guys, especially with drugs, money, influence, to get them into trouble, and it's not the government officials or the political officials or the people who, are trying to cause problems. It's the young kids who are going to have more problems. It's their families who are going to be affected. So if you can pray, that would be amazing. January, I think, this Saturday is the election. So please, please, please pray for that. Of course, translation and literacy in Sierra Leone, as you can tell, there's a lot of work to be done everywhere all the time. Progress in the consultant checking. I mapped out the schedule. If we could work with a consultant every month for the next 5 years, we would be done in 5 years for the Monday team. We're already behind because the consultant doesn't have enough time and I'm here and all of that. But if we as a team can get ready for her or another consultant, like she just needs to come or be with us. So like if you just praying for her to have time or other consultants to be available so that we can really be able to progress at the rate that the team can. The safety and health of translation and literacy people. The translators can have a lot of health problems or family challenges. One thing about living in a community culture is that if there's a funeral, people go. People know more people, so they know more people who have passed away, so they have more funerals, and there are a lot more health challenges in Sierra Leone, a lot of deaths that don't need to happen. And the translators get in motorbike accidents or have all sorts of health concerns. So if you can pray for that. And then traveling mercies as I travel around the US and for my training and studies so I can
We
concentrate.
just want to say thank you for all that you do.
Sorry, that's yeah, so thank you. I know I went over time. This is my first presentation that I've done since I've been back, and I know I talked for too long. So if you have any suggestions for me, You are one of my home churches, so I feel comfortable like asking you guys to do that for me. So you can be honest and kind and let me know if there's something that I focused too much on or not enough on, or you didn't hear that you would have liked to hear. And if you have any questions or comments, just let me know. And
Yeah, we just wanted to thank you for coming.
yeah,
It was very informative.
thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Is your dress up?
Yes, I got this made. I bought the material in Bow, and I got it made in
So it's a
McKinney.
traditional pattern.
Yeah. So I would say it's traditional now. I think actually a lot of the fabrics now are imported, but it's like the people who import it to West Africa, they're not the ones who wear it. Like the people in West Africa are the ones who wear it.
It's
So
very pretty. I just thought
Yeah,
maybe it was
yeah.
traditional.
yeah, it is. But it's not made in Sierra Leone. The dress was made in Sierra Leone. The fabric was probably imported, but that's the style that is worn. So I like it. Yes, sir.
Do you have your master's degree already?
I'm working on my first master's degree. I
Okay.
took some classes at the linguistics school at the master's level, and I'm like,
And where is that degree, would that degree come from?
I'm taking it out of Biola University in California. It's like a Calvinist.
And what would
University,
be the- what
but-
would be the major in it?
It'll be New Testament, and then once I finish that, I'll probably do a master's in Old Testament.
Well, New Testament, Old Testament, what aspect of it would, you talk about consultants?
Yeah, so for this, because this school isn't like a translation school, so it's just like a normal seminary. So they're training pastors and youth ministers and future Greek and Hebrew professors. So I guess my main focus has been more on exegesis to make sure I can understand the Greek and Hebrew better and knowing how to understand the whole text, the background and all of that, so that if you understand the background of the text, then it's easier to understand the actual meaning so that I can help the translators with their job.
Okay, also, you talked a bit before about using different English translations as a basis for your Mende translation.
Yeah.
I thought you were from Hebrew and Greek.
Yeah, so this is one of the challenges. Unlike the NIV and ESV translation committees, we don't have like 15 Greek and Hebrew scholars who have gotten their PhD. It's just not available yet in Sierra Leone, or if people have that capacity, they live somewhere else or they're already doing 400 other things. So we mostly translate from the English, but that's one of the reasons I'm there, because I have Greek and Hebrew training. So the times when we're like, okay, well, the English isn't really making much sense, or it sounds kind of weird, or we just need to go back. I keep track of that, but also the consultant, like I look at the Greek and Hebrew with the English gloss to help me along. The consultant, when I'm looking at her computer, she just has the Greek and Hebrew. So like I'm at this level and then she's at the next level. So that's the level I hope to get to one day, but I'm still working on it. But we have, so that's kind of why the stages go as they go, because we can't do it the same way like the NIV did it. We need to do it in a way that works for the different contexts that we're in. And a lot of times we're working with pastors who have maybe a seminary degree, but a lot of them don't have Greek and Hebrew. Teachers, literacy people, linguistics people, so they don't necessarily have that Greek and Hebrew exegesis background, but they know their language well and they know English well. And they have the intelligence to do the work, but they don't always have the education background to do all of the aspects of the work. So that's one of the reasons why I'm there, and one of the reasons that Bridget and other consultants come in and help us with that.
Are you gonna go for your doctorate degree?
If I become a consultant, currently I'm required to have a doctorate. So they have, Gordon Conwell on the East Coast, they have a program that leads into translation. So it'd be like a doctorate of ministry with a focus in Bible translation.
You're a
So
pretty smart cookie.
I hope so, or I need to be. So
You don't mind me calling you a cookie.
in this context, it's okay. So yeah, So anything, there's also a newsletter sign up for those of, I know a lot of you probably already signed up. For anybody who's not on the newsletter list, you can sign up. You can look at the Sierra Leone money. We have new money now. They cut off a bunch of zeros. And then some of the prayer card and stuff like that. You can take a pen, you can take a water bottle sticker. So sorry I talked so long, but seriously, any suggestions, let me know. Thank you.
So you think Andy in Bible study?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I'm just like, you know,
They just want to know our language. And that's why, like, sometimes I know, like, visiting friends, I didn't know comprehension before I got into it. It's one of the things where it makes sense for you to know what I'm doing.
yeah, I mean, this was very informative. You did a really good job. I don't like it was, but I like stories that talk about what you, where you live and what you're dating and like, it's like, that's awesome.
Yes, that's always fun.
And your dog. And your
So my dog and
Yeah.
after a while, and I'm just like, how's
Where are the girls now?
right now, we're still at my hometown. You guys, I'm on the right, to make sure that everybody sees, make sure that they kiddo on the other back there, they take after us yeah, so, but he is like, yeah, so you make sure they have,
Well, I realize it could be misunderstood.
Well, thank you, Eve. How long are you in the States?
I got in November.
Okay.
Yes, I can imagine that, you know,
I could say I got that. I mean, I could tell
Because they're kind of just like
Well, I mean, are we gonna see you guys this summer? I think they
Thanks so much. Yeah, you probably know we can eat better with passes. Yeah, but those passes out of we use it, we can too much, missing it out. Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, Those are blessings. Do you know French?
I went to Senegal for like 5 days and
I have to pick up right now. But you work with French people, aren't you? You're converted, yeah.
Thank you. And just encourage every day. My hands are so cold. But yours are cold
Hey, Paul.
Did you already ask him?
No, I was just kind of checking to see what you.
So I put information there because that is what she wanted to do. She lives at Victoria St. Paul on campus. And just, I'm, the missionary from Spring Lake Church. And, I was wondering, I know that you go to Q42 as I did. And I was wondering if you're interested in some abroad. I don't see the mom. Well, no, she might not just say, I was talking to other members of the church. Yeah, just say, well, Michael Chesky works at Concordia. But you can just say members of the church were, after I mentioned it, a couple of them came up to me and said, oh, they're in Concordia St. Paul. So I'm just hoping you maybe steer her a little bit, give her some inspiration because she's getting off track. And I thought, well, really, she's getting off track. It's scary. Oh my gosh, she did. Sorry, Martha, but she smoked all over the church. Just over. I want to move it, but in where you Walmart. She was mentoring in theology. Now she's all over the board. So maybe you can say, you know, we have openings right now, you know, for to study abroad, or what you do. Her best friend in high school was a monk, you know, was among girls. So I remember, you know, she was her best friend, you know, for all that time. So that's what really made her interested. So maybe you can fill in and just say, you know, my friend's venturing to that we are in over and work abroad. How's that? That'd be wonderful, you know. Everybody knows her here. Oh, okay. Well, you should know with all my bad handwriting. Sorry, I had lots of surgery, so my handwriting looks like a little.
Yeah, I didn't get a phone number. How did I connect it? There's somebody.
Look at that.
So I
Looks like it's too much. I tried to get you like
we don't have a little bit of Swedish, but
I'm gonna redo the full meetings and stuff, and I'll redo that. 2 years
I didn't even realize that was your traditional print for everything. You just looked cute.
Thank you. Well, it's kind of like my goal is always to be like when I'm at presentations, but things are more complicated in the US when it comes to like wearing
Oh, it's just
other
cute.
people's culture.
Oh,
Clothes.
Oh, it's
So
just
I'm like,
cute.
when I'm at church, I know it's okay because I'm like representing people who can't come, but like outside, I don't want to look like I'm wearing West African. So I try and like get the both, best of both worlds.
It's just cute.
Yeah.
I have a couple of thoughts. I don't know how this works. So when New Life sends the church to Lutheran Bible translators, the Lutheran Bible translators gives you the donations. Do you get taxed again?
I do pay taxes as a like person, but I don't know exactly how because they use that
You're
money.
taxing it as income. 'Cause that's your salary.
Yeah, because it's salary, benefits, and then like the money that I use for work in Sierra Leone.
So what I'm thinking is like, yeah, I still tired of the little tax thing. I pay my taxes, and then you
Well, that's
donate to church.
Yeah.
And then they turn around because we're trying to give the money to you, and then you turn around and pay taxes again. Do you pay Wisconsin income tax?
Either I think Wisconsin or Missouri, because I think because LBT's in Missouri, so I can't remember.
Okay, so technically you don't live, but you're paying taxes on it again.
Yeah.
When my brain started to try, it's like, would it be more helpful if it's like, okay, your life wants to donate X number of dollars if we know directly where it needs to go? So like, if it's going to, because you have to pay your own tuition then for that, or is Lutheran Bible transfer?
So usually I pay for it and then I get reimbursed.
Okay.
because it's for work, so.
But you get taxed on it before you get reimbursed on it. When we're on Realtor training, that's would be a good thing, because if there's a way to, if there's a way to reimburse some of this, it's a lot more than you can accomplish, because if that money, if instead of giving it to the managers, we're paying it to the, towards the tuition and the, for your master's to finish up that. So there might be some reason why that would be really good to talk to a tax person and figure out, is there a way
Just make sure I'm like,
yeah.
doing everything correctly.
There's so much more in the money inside of the there are a lot of tax cuts, not and then it's like we wanted to go again. So, yeah, a good tax.
Yeah, I don't know how the all works, because I guess, like, my salary, I'm sure it's taxed somehow. I don't know if I'm just taxed by being alive, because I mean, my salary is not like super high, so I'm sure my salary is like being taxable.
It's still taxing. Yeah,
But, because I pay for it out of my salary, but I get everything back from LBT, but I'm not sure how it works, like.
And that is, if you didn't have to pay for something, to get reimbursed something, whatever it is, that you need. So that might be something that you wanna focus on is, tax evasion. Because what's the difference if we pay it towards,
Yeah.
you know what, our money towards emails, instead of sending to LBT, sending it directly to.
Yeah, I think I would just have to look, because I usually budget for everything at the beginning of the year, so like every single month, we 200 this amount per month or per year. So like, if like we planned it out well enough ahead of time,
Yeah.
like for next year or something, so you can kind of
Yeah, maybe
reduce
paying
the budget for education or whatever in the
Yeah. Well, talk to a tax person, because that might be, because if we can get, this is something we just, you know, we always need to figure out how to get the most benefit back. Because, you know, the world is changing, and everything is more expensive and stuff. But right, if it's turning around,
McDonald's Coats are now $1.29.
you know, it's just, you know, just how to, you know, how to, so you might want to figure out the taxing, because, you know, we could certainly talk about, is it better to write an invoice to, it's like, oh, you're donating to this, put this in Amy's account at this university account. You were. Yes. You know, type of thing. It's something to just churn on it, because the more that you have, the more that you can do. Another part that I had was in the presentation, when I realized that you were going over a little bit and stuff. You might want to
Like looking at my watch, and then the problem is even if I set a timer, then I forget to set my timer and even look at it.
And
So.
this is the first run. Always think you're so good about telling us what all of the different pieces. If I was going to shorten it in any way, I'll think marketing and think about like the people you're talking. It's like, okay, here's our team and here's all the components of the team. We've got a person that does this. Last time when you presented, I can't remember what was different, but we were all just sitting there going, wow, about like the translating experience. I can't remember what was different.
I did have that was one of the pieces, because I was going to open the translation software, but I ran out of time. And that's where I was going to look at it first and kind of point out some of the stuff that we see.
Yeah, that
and I had because in the last one I had a slide of some of the normal challenges, like we don't have a word for the color purple, and that I was supposed to so I think maybe I'll just add that slide in but change the examples. So I have a lot more now.
Yeah.
So but that I was trying to make the new presentation so it's not exactly the same, but it was kind of the same. I know. Well, and it's because one time I did a presentation, I was like, well, does anybody remember? And nobody was saying. No problem. Because some people are new and it's 4 years and translation is complicated.
It's so fascinating.
It took me the 4